couple more things I want to go over before you're up and running and rolling out this digital painting project, this illustration narrative project. And that is mainly page setup, a couple tips for setting up the composition, especially if students choose to do kind of like a comic or digital comic style. There's some tips for creating cool comic styles, so I'm going to show that. And then I wanted to spend a little bit of time looking at text and some text options you have in Photoshop, and how you can make text work in like a children's book illustration or something of that sort. And then I think what I'll do is link a bunch of YouTube videos of some Photoshop paintings by some artists that do a really good job explaining sort of the simple approaches to digital painting, because most artists are going to do things very differently, and it's good to see a kind of a range of styles. So usually showing the kids while they're working, I'll usually have a video playing in the background of a digital painter painting, and it's good to get some ideas and some inspiration just by watching the way people handle things. So I think you can learn kind of through that, and also through just doing. So I suggest you just grab these tools and paintbrushes and really just try to crank out a couple paintings and have fun with it. Don't set any great expectations for yourself. Just kind of go through the motions, build up your layers, build up your coloring, start with flat coloring, add shading, add highlights, stuff like that, and see where it takes you. So the first thing about setting up your page layout is that right now, again, I've opened a new file and it's a poster size, so 18 by 24, but here's the part where you really want your students to think about what size page they're working with. If it's a children's book, what size book is it? Lots of children's books use different layouts, different book sizes that are more inviting. A lot of more square formats, or which allow for bigger pictures and just an easier format for looking at. And comic books have a very certain size range that you'll have students go search out and do the research and figure it out, and so that they can do their own research on that and find the actual sizes that comic books use. So I suggest you send them to do that work. But anyway, so that's the first thing. So you want them to create the size page that they would be using, which is really easy. And that they're aware of that. And then the next is I just want to show you how you would set up kind of a comic book page, because this is kind of a really cool technique. So first thing I'm going to do is add a layer, so I'm not working on the background layer as usual. And then I'm actually going to get my rectangle selection tool, and I'm going to do this quick. If your students are doing this and they want to make things precise, they can pull out guides, and the way you do that is you would click on the ruler and drag out, and you can click on the side one and you can drag out, and you can see that it lines up with the ruler at the top, so you can put a line at this specific point at the 15 inches or whatever. And then if you need to get rid of them, you can grab your arrow tool, V on the keyboard, the move tool, which is up here, and just drag this back to where it came from, and it'll go away. So you can have them measured out, make it a lot more precise. I'm just going to do this quick so you get the idea of the method. And what I'm going to do is drag out some rectangles that represent sort of my comic cells. So I'll drag one out, and I'm going to hold Shift to add to that selection. And this is all selection stuff that we went over in the Photoshop composite lesson. So this should be familiar with all the students. And I'm just dragging out, and again holding Shift, so I add to the selection instead of making a whole new selection. I just made some comic book cells, or maybe I want this to be a long one like this. It doesn't really matter. And if they're going to do this, I'd have them read a few comic books, look at a few comic books, and understand the way the flow works and how it goes. Now this is nothing perfect or fancy. I'm just showing you the technique. So the other thing I do is grab my polygon lasso tool just to show you how you could do something like this. If I hold Option, it'll become subtract from selection, so I can click once, let go, and now I can hold Shift and lock on that 45. So this is a nice perfect angle. Let go, hold Shift, let go, hold shift again, let go, close that up, and it's going to create that slice in the center here. Now it looks kind of funky because it's just sort of blinking back and forth, but it's selected, and we'll see how that looks in the next step. So now that I have selections kind of representing how I want my comic book layout, I can right click in here. I can go to fill, and it's going to fill the contents of this selection with, depending on what I select here, foreground color, background color, my selection. So I'm going to click black and hit OK, and you're going to see something like this, which is perfect. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually get rid of these, because we actually want to draw in these cells. We don't want it to be black. So what I can do on this layer is go to fill and turn my opacity to my fill color down to 0, which essentially makes it look like there's nothing there. But we can bring this back on. It's just the fill color is 0. And then next, what I'm going to do, and you can deselect this, so you can Command D to take your selection off. Next thing I'm going to do with this layer selected is go to FX, and I'm going to create a stroke. So that's going to put a line around the edge. And I can play with how big I want this line. I can change, let's see, I think I can change, I can put it on the inside, the line on the inside. That looks a little better to what we're doing, and keep it like that. So now I have some nice outlines to my cells. Perfect. So the next thing we're going to do is mask out these different areas so that we can draw on each one without affecting the rest. So this is kind of a pretty cool technique too. So what I'll do is I'll grab my magic wand tool and I'll click on the first cell, and it will select that, because remember, even though you don't see it, your fill is there. So I can click on that and it'll select that whole cell. Actually, what I want to do, I guess we can change that stroke back to the outside. Anyway, with this fill color selected, I can use that selection on a new, we're going to create a new folder, new group, and with this selected still, I'm going to hit this mask button. So now anything inside of this group is going to be masked here. So if I create a layer in this group and I start drawing, and you'll see I draw with blue, you'll see that no matter where I draw, it masks just in this square. Now you see that's kind of the stroke problem I was kind of thinking about when I made it on the inside. That's going to be a problem. So we can go back to our effects here, and we can go to our stroke, and we can put it back to the outside. So that's going to be much nicer with this type of process. So then what I can do is go back to layer 1, and I can grab my magic wand, select the second cell here, and then I can create another group. And with that selection still selected, I can hit mask again, and now this group, any layer I create under this group will be, and let's change colors so you can kind of see the difference. Anything I paint, B for brush, anything I paint here will only show up in this cell. So you can do a really nice comic this way, and you can kind of have the freedom to draw without having to worry about cleaning this stuff up afterwards. So that's pretty cool. So that's kind of how you would set up a comic page or a digital comic. And then be able to draw in each cell individually. So students usually like that technique. It's kind of a neat trick, and it makes a lot of sense. So next we'll talk about adding some text, and then I think I'll link a handful of digital paint videos that I think are really good, that you might want to pay attention to, and will help you think about different approaches to digital painting.